Hello everyone, my name is Mark. Welcome back to Mark's Remarks. Today I'm going to be reading a review for a book by Kelsey Zazanis, which is called Father's Daughter, Essays on Incest and Individuation. This is a content warning, I guess. I don't know. I don't get any ads on YouTube, so I don't think I need to be worried about demonetizing things. Um, it's been a minute since I wrote this review, probably a few months now. Um, Check out Kelsey's Substack, which I will have linked in the description. This was, I believe, a self-published book by her. It was a very interesting book. I don't know very much about the topic, but I do know a lot about reading and about reviewing and about writing and whatnot, so that's kind of more of the angle that I took on it. Hopefully you find it interesting, and without further ado, here's a review. We drop into this book in the same way Kelsey dropped into her worst childhood experiences, completely unprepared and armed with inadequate language. Initially, the repetitious language of the first couple essays was annoying, but it served several important purposes. Rather than simply stating that she didn't have the language to understand what was happening to her and her sister, she showed through radically limited diction the difficulty of describing these experiences and the resulting feelings. English is a language uniquely ill-suited to talking about love. We have Germanic and Latinate words for most concepts, options which gives various shades of meaning, but we only have one word for love. Hiding behind that word are so many agendas, personal, political, and otherwise. Our linguistic poverty is a weapon wielded by cowards who prefer vagueness in service to their dark desires. For a short time, as children learning language, we are still building those unspoken grammatical rules and definitions which we'll use for years without thinking about. We don't have words for gerunds and participles as children, but we grasp something of the concept. Kelsey's experience was something like this, but much more tragic. She experienced unspeakable, repeated violations, and language from her father attempted to cover over the incredible gaps between what she deserved and what she received. But stretching language so far is exactly like the half-assed attempts at filling potholes that many cities settle for. In other words, the wound will inevitably reopen. When abuse is called love, the holiest concept we have is at risk of being corrupted. It's the same when bad theologians describe God in ways that are cultish and harmful, which is why good theology is so deadly important. These two domains, familial and spiritual love, often lack a clear boundary for children. As has been attested with so many former Catholics, God the Father and our earthly father inevitably inform each other. Kelsey uses this parallel to devastating effect, likening her earthly father's sadistic abuse to the sort of abuses to be feared from an all-powerful yet not benevolent deity. Rather than being able to learn about the world in a safe environment like most children, she was forced to learn unspoken and unspeakable rules about domestic life. She had to learn when to dissociate, which battles to fight, which ones to lose on purpose. Thus, when people complimented her on her intelligence, it was less of a compliment and more of a tautological statement. Without it, she wouldn't still be here. But the thing about this intelligence is that, like an atheistic scientist questioning God, it challenges the traditional beliefs that previously were taken for granted. This upsets the God Father and his adherents. Skipping closer to the end, the writing frees up considerably. Rather than the at times claustrophobic, childlike prose at the start, the middle to end of the book is where Kelsey's writing hits her stride. Narratives where she can build up momentum help us to follow and her to express more freely. The tight, traumatic repetition of the first few chapters opens up like a massaged muscle into the later chapters, which succeed on an aesthetic level. It does feel somewhat vulgar to judge a book like this on its aesthetics, however, so I'll stop harping on that. I thank God that I can't relate to Kelsey's narrative, nor do I know anyone who can. Or, to interrupt here briefly, I probably do know someone who can. but I just don't know that they can relate to this. But it's important that she tells her story. It's important for us on the outside to grapple with this ourselves, because if we don't, we might risk becoming accomplices like her father's second wife. Though this chapter was directed at her, I was astonished at how well Kelsey bit her tongue and almost entirely refused to insult her mother-in-law. I likewise was astonished by the next chapter, wherein she discussed revenge justice and ultimately came to the very mature but also very unpopular conclusion that we cannot simply approach this in an eye for an eye way that many righteously indignant people do. It's just like pedophilia more broadly and other unspeakable third-rail issues. Deep down, we all want to have the satisfaction of vociferously punishing these people, but as someone once pointed out to me, that threatens our own souls in the process. The really revolutionary thing to do is precisely what Kelsey argues, separating these people far from ourselves so they can never do the same damage again, but nevertheless giving them the help they need to deal with these disturbing urges and the past actions. They need to heal, not as much as those who they hurt, obviously, but they do need mercy. Good theology argues that we don't deserve mercy, but God gives it to us anyways, which is the purest kind of mercy, and it's precisely the kind that these people with monstrous pasts need to hear. The world tells us that we only have value insofar as we are productive, as we have something to offer which other people want. This is the message that Kelsey internalized about being sweet, stealing sweetness like her sweetness was stolen from her. Her metaphors are devastatingly effective, and eventually they help her to escape the need for metaphor altogether, so she could speak clearly and directly as she does in the later chapters. The chapter which did this was about how she used men to help process her trauma. The main stereotype of girls with daddy issues is that they seek their father's approval through sexual encounters with men. In this case, the men are a metaphor for the father, but Kelsey managed to flip this on its head, using the physical embodied examples of gentlemen to contradict and overwrite the violent masculine narrative burned into her psyche from childhood. It felt like this collection was just getting started, had finally gotten up to speed when it ended. I hope Kelsey continues this difficult but important work, because I and many others are here to hear more. We don't want the salacious details like true crime fanatics. Instead, we want narratives which uncover that which is too often passed over in shameful silence. All I can say is more, more, more. Keep going, Kelsey. We're rooting hard for you. I thought that was a good note to end on with the review, because I didn't want my criticisms to come across too harshly. I did chat with her briefly, and she seemed to have liked the review, and several of her followers did too, so hopefully you liked it. If you did, please do not like or subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.